put our Daihatchi 2220 size 2 hook in the vise and lay down a thread base about 3/16 of an inch back of the hook eye. We're then going to put a set of dumbbell eyes, black nickel tungsten, on top of the hook and run about 5 or 6 figure 8 loops over the top, then rotate the hook underneath. On this fly we're going to want the hook down. We continue wrapping it underneath. I'll then put a bit of crazy glue on top, just a drop, to work in with the threads. I always make several figure 8 wraps, and then I'll make a wrap just around the hook shank, between the hook shank and the fly. Pull that really tight, and that'll keep it from sliding around. Once the eyes are in place, we're going to take some 30-pound Dacron backing. I'm going to tie it along the top side of the hook. Once it is secured, I'll thread 3 glass beads, silver-lined blue glass beads, onto the backing. Then I will put the trailer hook on, and then we'll thread back through the beads again, and then tie them all off onto the hook. And you'll be done with your trailer hook. Be sure and put your trailer hook into a material clip or something on your vise if you can. Leaving it dangling, I guarantee you're going to end up with a hook in your finger or your thumb at some point. If you can keep it as far out of the way as possible, so much the better. And a little bit of crazy glue doesn't hurt at all. One thing you don't want is a 24-inch brown yanking this fly off on you, because it's hooked up on the rear hook and just gives it a good pull. Take 2 smaller marabou plumes and put one on either side of the hook for a tail. It'll be about the same bulk as the original tail. If you try putting on one piece, it just won't veil the beads as well as putting one on either side. And having them on either side will give a little more freedom of movement to the trailer hook as well. Once the two marabou tails are tied on, we're going to proceed with the fly and tie basically the same fly we tied for the trailer, with the blue flash, the blue ribbing, the hackle, the rubber legs, everything. We're going to finish that portion of the fly about 3/16 of an inch behind the eyes that we have tied on. So we'll leave a space of about 3/16 of an inch behind the eyes as well as in front for our deer hair head that we're going to put in later. Now for the fun part. We're coming to the very last step, which is putting on the deer hair, spinning it, and trimming it. I take a pretty big clump of deer hair, a good sized pencil at least. Clean the fuzz out of the butt ends, otherwise it won't spin very well. As a matter of fact, it's going to have a hard time spinning with the amount of material on the hook anyway. But clean it all up, then you can cut it off so we've got maybe a half an inch. We're going to extend the tips back into the wound hackle and then spin the deer hair in place. One or two loose wraps over top, and then once those wraps are in place, we just pull tight and the hair should flare out nicely. Okay, we've got two there, and pull and the hair flares up and spins a bit. There's too much material. Now we're going to flip the hook over and do exactly the same thing on the underside, and that will fill in the whole side of the whole head. Once that's done, we'll push the hair back. We'll add a second pair of deer hair clumps behind the eyes. Again, they won't spin all that well, so we'll use one top and one on the bottom. And we should get a good full coverage at the back with that. The second layer of deer hair, we don't have to worry about keeping the tips on or stacking them at all. We're just going to be cutting a section off nice and flat either end and spin them in. Clean them up, spin them into place. We're not worried about the tips at this point. Now we're going to take one large clump of deer hair. The front part of the hook is nice and bare, so if we put one large clump on, cut the tips off, clean it up, and then use the same technique, but we'll spin it, and you'll see how nicely it spins on a bare hook. We'll fill in the entire hook at the front of the eye, or just behind the eye with this last clump. Pull the excess deer hair out of the way and whip finish, and we're almost done. All that we have left at this point is going to be trimming the deer hair. The whole trimming process is pretty easy, but it's important you use the right tools. I've tried trimming deer hair with good sharp scissors. It can be done. I've also used those single-sided razor blades that everybody gets, the craft blades. They're sharp and they can do a job, but it's not the best job that you'll find. What I've found, you can go to London Drugs, or I guess basically any drugstore, and buy Wilkinson Sword razor blades. They're for the old style safety razor. They are sharp, very sharp, and they're flexible, which is important. You'll see in a second. I tried using the whole blade at one point, but you'll see I've cut them in half. I just use a pair of wire cutters to crease it and then bend it, and you can cut it in half that way. If you don't, the center slot catches on the eye when you're trying to trim a large head, and it just makes it a little more difficult. But having that Wilkinson Sword blade is really important. They're very flexible, so you can actually trim a nice curve with them. And you don't need to use very much pressure. They're so sharp that if you just bump the deer hair with them, it just slices right through them. And you want to go slowly at it. You don't want to go too deep, or you'll end up cutting away that collar that you're trying to leave behind. There you go, the sex dungeon. I'm going to be fishing this in Alberta on the Bow River, mostly looking for big browns and huge rainbows. It will work well for bull trout as well. You can tie it in a number of different colors: white, black, olive. If you are using it in BC, be sure and cut off that lead hook. They're legal in Alberta, but not here in BC. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks.